From popular hot drinks in Asia like chai in India, matcha in Japan, and dalgona coffee in South Korea, the hot beverage industry in Asia Pacific is very competitive, and we are starting to see shifts in purchasing patterns and consumer behavior, further accelerated by COVID-19. In this episode of Deep Dive, we speak to tea expert Rihan, who is the executive director of the 1872 Clipper Tea Co., a specialty tea company operating out of Singapore. Rihan is also executive director of BP De Silva Group, the parent company of Clipper Tea, and Tea Tank, a production arm supplying tea to global markets. Rihan is also co-founder of Teapasa, a multi-brand tea marketplace, as well as Profile Print, an AI-powered food ingredient analysis platform. Hi, Rihan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe we can start off by you giving us an overview of the tea market here in Singapore and the broader Asia region.
Okay. So I guess tea is one of those drinks that have a lot of cultural associations with Asia. Given the fact that tea was founded in China 3,000 years ago, so I think the association with Asia in general it runs very deep and very historical. Coffee is a newer sort of beverage that has come into Asia, but tea is really the sort of historical beverage next to water. And it's if you look at India and China, it's actually both are predominantly tea drinking market, and I think that has an impact on the rest of Asia as well. Sri Lanka, for instance, where my forefathers are from, also is a tea drinking market, and in Singapore, the tea market, I guess, it would have been predominantly, I would imagine, historically a tea drinking market, but we were very influenced by what happened in the US, which was the rise of Starbucks. And today there are about 150 Starbucks in Singapore. People don't realize, and from that, there's a lot of there's Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. There are all these specialty coffee companies that have risen. So I think there's a lot more push into coffee the past 20 years. But if you look at how bubble tea has done, that's still in the tea category. So I think there's a very healthy balance between coffee and tea in Singapore.
So, the F&B industry is constantly evolving with trends, in line with consumer trends. So, Clipper Tea having operated since 1989, so for over 30 over years, what are some of the consumer trends you see in the region?
I guess there's definitely what I notice is there's a move towards quality. So what if you look at the different coffee and tea segments? If you look back 20 years, the consumer was engaging with a much more mass market product, but today you can start to see certain niches are starting to form. For instance, like the herbal category in tea. 20 years ago, you wouldn't even see that, but today on the shelf, you will notice that some of even the bigger brands have started introducing herbs and herbal blends into tea. So it's no longer just a basic black tea, but a blend of tea. Another trend is that the quality aspects are increasing. So if you look at what the consumer would engage with in terms of a black tea in the past, they're starting to want to know where the tea is from and the quality associated with it. They're no longer satisfied with just the mass market product. So to me, there's a push towards a more qualitative product and where the supply chain is a lot more visible and they kind of understand, much like how wine or whiskey, they're more premium wines and whiskeys. I think they're more premium teas, and premium teas, that category is growing. Good example is our new shop that we opened about probably 4 months ago in Jewel. I created a completely new menu that really focuses on really specialty tea, which is where we look at very specific regions and specific plantations, and we buy the best quality from that particular plantation, and we get it into the store basically maybe 3 weeks from the time of manufacture, and that creates a quality of product that is unmatched in the market. And then we extract it, we make drinks out of it. So the idea here, although they're all black teas in the menu, they are distinctively very different. And what I really want the consumer to start to understand is that nuance of taste, and to start understanding the subtleties of flavor, and developing their palate really. So I guess the push is really to share the expertise that we have as a company in the supply chain. Our family has had involvement in the tea industry for 5 generations. So we have very deep expertise and deep knowledge in the supply chain that I want to share with the consumer. So the advantages that we have, having that whole back end, I want to bring that into the forefront with Clipper, and that's what I've done with the jewel store.
So, prior to our conversation off camera, you mentioned that Clipper Tea has operates retail outlets in Brunei, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Cambodia, Myanmar, Japan, as well as Qatar. And you mentioned that for your export markets, Hong Kong is one of the fastest growing markets. Why do you think this is so?
I guess there's a good reason for that. I think my thinking is that Hong Kong is a strong tea drinking market. If I look at the wholesale business that we do out of Sri Lanka, where we export black tea around the whole world, we export a lot of tea to Hong Kong as well. So if you look at the Cha Ting business, where you have your milk tea, that blend of tea that they use is 90% Ceylon tea, and we probably cover maybe about 20%, or I would say 15 to 20% of the export out of Sri Lanka to Hong Kong. So we understand that it's a very strong black tea drinking market, and our brand is very strong in black teas, given our association with Sri Lanka that makes the best black teas in the world. So I guess that association, that historical association with Ceylon black tea helps, and therefore us as Clipper having a strong black tea SKU range has done well there. I think the tea market is really poised for a renaissance. I think there's going to be so much creativity, so much ideas, so much capital that will be deployed in the tea category. The reason is that I guess tea has always, like I mentioned, India and China have historically been tea drinking markets. But tea drinking as we know it didn't really, in these markets at least, didn't innovate till maybe about 15, 20 years ago. Like prior to that, like there was no bubble tea in China. There was bubble tea in Taiwan, but there wasn't bubble tea in China. And then even that concept of milk tea, right? That was a Hong Kong concept, maybe a Taiwanese concept. And those concepts really permeated as China opened up. Similarly, in India, India has its traditional way of making tea and how they consume tea. But now there are a lot of young entrepreneurs who have looked at tea and like trying to differentiate themselves. So to me, these are really the catalysts of tomorrow, and there's a lot of potential because there's going to be more capital, more young people working on tea. I think there's so much potential for tea, and on the back of that, there's also the whole like bubble tea craze that has really sort of permeated a lot of Asia. So like even if you look at Singapore, I estimate we have at least maybe 300 to 500 bubble tea stores in Singapore. And what that actually does, although people think, okay, I'm drinking bubble tea, but actually you're drinking a tea base and you're starting to engage with tea. And you might drink bubble tea for maybe 5 years, 10 years of your life. But what are you going to do after that? Like, yes, you might drink coffee, but then you've also grown a taste for tea. And then you would drink like a cup of tea in the morning. And so to me, bubble tea has also allowed the category of tea to be proliferated around Asia. So I think there's a lot of potential for the tea category, and it's a very exciting time for tea.